Welcome to Jazz Piano Skills. I'm Dr. Bob Lawrence. It's time to discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed listening to the interview last week with Ron Drotos. And I hope you all had fun wrapping up loose ends in the key of E major, because today we are moving on. So today you are going to discover a key of A major harmonic workout. And you're going to learn how to think within the key of A major harmonically. And you're going to play essential jazz piano voicings, block chords, traditional and contemporary shells, two-handed shapes, using common harmonic motion, plus various rhythmic comping patterns focusing on the dotted 8th, 16th note rhythmic pattern. So, as I always like to say, regardless of where you are in your jazz journey, a beginner, an intermediate player, an advanced player, even if you think of yourself as an experienced and seasoned professional, you're going to find this Jazz Piano Skills podcast lesson exploring a key of A major harmonic workout to be very beneficial. But before we jump into the key of A major harmonically, I want to take a few minutes, as I do at the beginning of every Jazz Piano Skills podcast episode, to welcome new listeners. And if you are indeed a new listener to the Jazz Piano Skills podcast, if you are new to Jazz Piano Skills, I want to welcome you and personally invite you to become a Jazz Piano Skills member. All you have to do, visit JazzPianoSkills.com. And once you arrive at the homepage, you can begin to poke around a little bit, explore all of the jazz educational resources and materials and the services that are available for you, ready for you to use to help you significantly improve your jazz piano skills. For example, all Jazz Piano Skills members have access to the educational podcast packets, the illustrations, the lead sheets, the play-alongs. These are educational materials that I develop, produce, and publish every single week for every weekly podcast episode. And you're going to want to have these podcast packets, the illustrations, the lead sheets, and the play-alongs in your hands as you listen to this podcast lesson. And you're certainly going to want to have these educational podcast packets sitting on your piano when practicing. Also, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, you have access to the Sequential Jazz Piano Curriculum. This is an online curriculum loaded with comprehensive courses, all of them using a self-paced format. There are educational talks for you to enjoy, interactive media to test your conceptual skills and understanding, video demonstrations in all 12 keys of the jazz piano skills being taught, play-alongs, and much more. You also, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, have like I like to say, a reserved seat in the online weekly masterclasses, which are in essence a 1-hour online lesson with me each and every week. You also, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, have access to the online interactive fakebook, which grants you access to jazz standards from the Great American Songbook. You'll be able to enjoy the chord changes, harmonic function lead sheets, play-along files, historical insights, there are inspirational recordings, and much more. It's an ever-growing collection of tunes that you should absolutely discover, learn, and play. You also, as a Jazz Piano Skills member, have access to the private online Jazz Piano Skills community, which hosts a variety of engaging forums. There are podcast-specific forums, course-specific forums, and of course, there are just general jazz piano forums for you to enjoy as well. Of course, you'll have access to all of them, and you will be able to contribute to them as well, which I strongly encourage you to do. The whole point of the forums is to share, engage, and of course, grow. And last, but certainly not least, you have access to unlimited private, personal, and professional educational support provided by me whenever and as often as you need it. So again, take a few minutes, visit JazzPianoSkills.com to learn more about the wonderful educational opportunities that await you and how to easily activate your membership. Now, there are several membership plans to choose from, and I'm quite certain there is one that is perfect for you. But nevertheless, if you get there, you're poking around, you have some questions, please do not hesitate to let me know. Please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to spend some time with you, answer any questions that you may have, and to help you in any way that I can. Okay, let's discover, learn, and play jazz piano. Let's get after this key of A major harmonic workout. All right, as all of you regular listeners know, I go through this little routine every time we begin our exploration of a new key at the beginning of every month. And of course, I'm going to go through it again today simply because it's tradition. After all, it's tradition. And I love doing it. It's fun. So are you ready? I want to encourage you to say it along with me as I do this, right? The keys of C, F, and B flat are over. The keys of E flat, A flat, and D flat, over. The keys of G flat, B, and E are over. It's time to move on. It's time to move on to the key of A major. Now, doesn't that feel great, right? Of course it does. It always feels good moving on, even if I'm saying to myself, I don't have a complete handle on the skills in this key, right? I need a little more time to get these skills under my fingers. Well, as I have said many times throughout this journey, it's a big deal to keep forging ahead no matter what, no matter how well you think you have mastered or have not mastered the essential jazz piano skills in previous keys, right? Or how shaky you may believe your jazz piano skills are in the previous keys. It's irrelevant. We must always be moving forward. Forward motion is the name of the game. It is the key to developing our jazz piano skills and becoming accomplished jazz pianists. I mentioned this point last month and even the month before, and I want to bring it to your attention again today. If you are truly serious, which I know you are, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. If you are truly serious about wanting to improve your jazz piano playing, then your goal should be to experience as much data, as I like to call it, data as possible. In other words, you must have a plan to efficiently and successfully cycle through essential jazz piano skills in all 12 keys. Your jazz journey must constantly be experiencing forward motion. As I like to say, you cannot allow grass to grow under your feet. You've heard me say this before as well. The number one reason why people find it difficult to improve their jazz playing is that they always practice the same things in the same keys over and over and over again. In essence, they are simply running in place. They're like that hamster on that wheel that just keeps running, going nowhere. They never push forward. They never move through the keys as we have set out to do this entire year, right? Our goal has been from January moving forward, 12 months, 12 keys, right? Studying the essential jazz piano skills in all 12 keys. Our voicings, our scales, arpeggios, chord scale relationships, improvisation, and rhythmic patterns, right? It's such a good plan, such a good approach, and doing so in such a good time frame. It's win, win, win. So today, we begin tackling the key of A major. So as I have stressed over and over, once we move on, we move on. In other words, we do not try to sneak back to the key of E or even previous keys to just simply check it out to see how well we remember the skills, the voicings, or the scales, or the arpeggios, right? It's time to move on. We'll circle the wagons back around to these previous keys, so no worries, right? For now, we move on. So the books on the key of E major, which we spent the entire month of September exploring, are now officially closed. And now we march on to the key of A major. And as we have done with the previous keys that we have explored throughout the year, right? C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, and E. We begin harmonically. We're going to explore the 7 chords found in the key of A major 7, B minor 7, C sharp minor 7, D major 7, E dominant 7, F sharp minor 7, and G sharp half diminished, using 4 specific approaches to voicing each chord: blocks, traditional shells, contemporary shells, and two-handed shapes. And we will then, as we have done with all of our previous keys, we will apply those voicings to various rhythmic patterns, which, as you know, have become increasingly more and more challenging each month. Remember that you can take the various rhythmic patterns that we've studied throughout the year in the various keys and play them using the voicings we are about to get under our fingers for the key of A major. That's not only okay, but it's a great idea. And you should, I like to think that you're carrying these various rhythmic patterns forward each month throughout the entire year, right? As we move through all 12 keys. So it's okay to keep bringing these rhythmic patterns along as we introduce new rhythmic patterns. I have throughout this year talked about improvisational vocabulary, and I want to revisit my thoughts about it today because, quite honestly, we need to hear it again and again and again because it's that important to our musical and jazz development. So listen carefully. When we jazz educators talk about developing improvisational vocabulary, and whenever this topic comes up, it's always discussed from a melodic point of view, right? Always melodic. In other words, improvisational vocabulary has become synonymous with melodic playing, which is only a third of the entire picture. In addition to emphasizing melodic development, we need to spend time discussing and focusing on harmonic development and rhythmic development when the topic of improvisation vocabulary is mentioned, right? Melody, harmony, rhythm. And that is precisely what all of the harmonic workouts are about: harmonic and rhythmic development. So when studying a solo, a melodic transcription, right, we always do so, if we do it correctly, we do so in such a way that the ideas and the approaches to melodic development displayed by the artist serve as a launching pad or gateway to the discovery of our own melodic creativity. As I said before on several occasions, we don't study a Bill Evans transcription in hopes to becoming an inferior replica of Bill Evans. No. We study a Bill Evans transcription so that Bill Evans can serve as our teacher and introduce us to our very own creative reservoir. If you have not thought about this, I strongly encourage you to do so. And think about this as well. When we focus on harmonic development, voicings, and rhythmic development, which is time, we should be doing so in the spirit of discovering our unique form of musical expression, right? All of it, whether you're studying melody, harmony, or rhythm, it should be done so in a way to discover our own creative reservoir, our own creative ideas, right? And again, this is precisely what the harmonic and melodic workouts are designed to do. It's what the harmonic and melodic workouts are all about. The voicings I share with you help you discover the sounds, the harmony you are drawn to. And the rhythms I introduce are done to help you develop a more robust internal sense of what I like to call expressive time. Now, I know all of this can be a little heady, so you need to spend a little time to process it and digest it and re-listen to it again and again so that it sinks in, right? Because again, conceptual understanding is what's going to drive our physical development. So spend some time thinking about this. And of course, just to remind you, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm always here to help and answer any questions that you have. So today we tackle the key of A major. And the educational agenda for today is as follows. Number 1, we begin our key of A major harmonic workout for October. Number 2, we are going to play essential harmonic voicings that you need to discover, learn, and play. Block shapes, traditional shells, contemporary shells, and two-handed shapes. Number 3, we are going to utilize a very relaxed swing groove of 90. Number 4, we will explore 12 comping rhythms, focusing primarily on the dotted 8th, 16th note rhythmic pattern. And number 5, we will apply our rhythmic comping patterns to the classic 2-5-1 progression in the key of A major. B minor 7 to E dominant 7 to A major 7. Now, if you are a Jazz Piano Skills member, I want you to take a few minutes right now. Hit the pause button. I want you to download and print your podcast packets, the illustrations, the lead sheets, and the play-alongs. Again, your membership, right? Your membership grants you access to all of the educational podcasts for every weekly podcast episode. And as I mentioned earlier, you should be using these podcast packets when listening to this episode. And of course, you should have them sitting on your piano when practicing as well. If you're listening to the podcast, this episode right now, on any of the popular podcast directories, such as Apple or Google, Amazon, there's Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, the list goes on, then be sure to go directly to JazzPianoSkillsPodcast.com to download your podcast packets. And you'll find the active download links in the show notes. Okay? Now, one final but extremely important message. If you think, right now, if you are thinking that the key of A major harmonic workout and the various skills that we are about to discover, learn, and play are over your head, then I would say to you, sit back, breathe in, breathe out, no worries. This is a no stress zone, right? Continue to listen, continue to grow your jazz piano skills intellectually, right? By just simply listening to this podcast episode. After all, every new skill is technically over our heads when first introduced. But this is how we get better, right? We place ourselves smack dab in the middle of conversations where we are hearing things that we've never heard before. And we are forced to grow intellectually. Right? I say it all the time. All musical growth begins upstairs, mentally, conceptually, before it can come out downstairs physically in your hands. So if something is confusing and frustrating and all jumbled up upstairs, it's going to be that way in your hands downstairs, right? So you have to take time to listen to sort things out conceptually. So listen to this podcast lesson now to discover and learn. The play, as it always does, will come in time. I guarantee it. Okay, the first thing I want to address is the very last page of your lead sheets packet. It's labeled Skills 17, and the title of the page is Comping Rhythms. You will notice 12 rhythmic patterns labeled letter A through letter L. You will also notice that these rhythmic patterns focus primarily on the dotted 8th, 16th note rhythmic pattern. And you will also notice that each of these rhythmic patterns is to be played with the 2-5-1 progression. precisely what we will do today. Now, do not bypass scales 1 through 16 found in your lead sheets packet, right? All 4 voicing types are blocks, traditional shells, contemporary shells, and two-handed shapes should be practiced first without rhythm and is outlined in scales 1 through 16 before tackling scale 17. Also, I want you to use the play-alongs included in your podcast packet. Now, I do not have time in this podcast episode to play through all 16 exercises and the 12 rhythmic patterns, so I'm going to trust that you do not get the cart ahead of the horse and that you spend time practicing scales 1 through 16 to make sure you have a handle on each of the 4 voicing types as applied to the chords found in the key of A major. Then, and only then, should you turn your attention to developing your comping skills using the voicings as you play the 2-5-1 progression in the key of A major. Make sense? Okay. I bring that point up every month, just stressing it again. Scales 1 through 16, then scale 17. All right. So let's dig in. I am going to play through exercises A through L at all 12 comping rhythms, okay? And I'm going to be using a very relaxed swing groove of 90 today. And each of these rhythmic lines is going to be played utilizing the 2-5-1 progression. And I am going to be using two-handed voicings today when I play these rhythmic ideas. Now, you can use any voicing type that you prefer. In fact, you can just use a single note to begin and then move to a voicing once you feel you have gained a functional command of the rhythmic line in time, of course, right? But today I will be doing again 90 2-5-1 progression using two-handed voicings. Okay, and I also will play through each line 6 times. The first time through, I'm just going to play the 2-5-1 progression. The last time through, I'm just going to play the 2-5-1 progression. The 4 cycles in between, the first time and the last time, I will play the rhythmic line as notated in your on your comping patterns lead sheet scale 17. Okay? So let's take a look at letter A. In fact, what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at letter A, B, C, and D. Okay? I want you to notice that the dotted 8th, 16th note rhythmic motif, that little rhythmic idea. In letter A, I am placing that idea on count 4 of measures 1 and 3. In letter B, I move that same rhythmic idea, the dotted 1/4-8th, to count 3. In letter C, I move it to count 2. In letter D, it's found and placed on count 1. So the idea is that I'm focusing on playing this dotted 8th, 16th note pattern. I'm focusing on playing that by placing it on each beat within the measure. Okay, so as I've stressed before, letter A through letter D, probably the most 4 important exercises on this entire lead sheet. Okay, so I'm going to go through each one. So letter A, the dotted 8th, 16th is placed on count 4. And notice on each one of these patterns, I always follow that dotted 8th, 16th with a quarter note. This will help you articulate this dotted 8th, 16th pattern correctly. Okay, we have a landing point, in other words. So let's bring the ensemble in. Let's check out letter A, right? Focusing on our dotted 8th, 16th note pattern on count 4. So here we go. Let's check it out and see what we think. difficult but nice. This is not an easy pattern, rhythmic motif to play, right? It just simply is not. So if you're trying to play through this right now and you're thinking, holy moly, well, join the club, right? It's not an easy rhythmic idea. Eventually, it's going to be a feel thing that will work for you with this. But if you want to approach it academically right now, like maybe count 1E and so you're coming in on the 1 and on the 1E and right? It's a 16th note at the end. So whatever academic approach that you want to take to mapping it out mathematically or using syllables, whatever works best for you, I would say it's quite all right. Utilize that to help you get the rhythmic idea in your ears and under your hands. And then it becomes a feel thing after that, right? You start to just feel it. Okay, so now let's take a look at line B. We're going to move that dotted 8/16th pattern now to count 3. And again, we're going to end that rhythmic motif with a quarter note. So we have our landing point again. But measure 1, measure 2, measure 3, same idea on counts 3 and 4. Okay, so let's bring the ensemble in. Let's check it out and see what we think. Here we go. Yep, it doesn't get any easier, right? When we move it to from count 4 to count 3, it just doesn't get any easier. So nice, right? So I want to also draw your attention to that in measure 4, I have an entire measure of rest. And that's for us to kind of lick our wounds, make an assessment of what we did well, what we need to adjust the second time through, right? I always love to do that when I'm practicing a skill. I love to end with a measure of rest so that I can assess the good, the bad, and the ugly and make any adjustments needed to correct the bad and the ugly. So now let's go on to letter C. We're taking that dotted 8th, 16th note pattern and we're moving it and placing it now squarely on count 2. And once again, you'll see measures 1, 2, 3, same rhythmic idea, right? Quarter note followed by the dotted 8th, 16th, ending with our landing point with another quarter note. Repeating it 3 times with a measure of rest at the end for assessment. So let's bring the ensemble in. Let's check it out. Here we go. 4 difficult, count 3 difficult, count 2 difficult. Guess what? Count 1 doesn't get easier. It's difficult too. So now we have our dotted 8th 16th placed on count 1, followed by a quarter note on count 2, again to our landing point. We're going to repeat that same idea, measure 1, measure 2, measure 3, followed by an entire measure of rest, and measure 4 for assessment purposes. Okay, so here we go. Nice swing groove, relaxed, 90. Going to repeat this, play this over the 2-5 using the 2-5-1 progression 6 times through, right? First time, just a 2-5-1 progression. Last time, just a 2-5-1 progression. Times 2, 3, 4, and 5. Repeating this rhythmic idea, this line 4 times. So here we go. Let's bring the ensemble in and let's check it out. All right, now we've done some serious grunt work, right? Letter A, letter B, letter C, letter D, some serious grunt work, and very methodical grunt work where we're taking our new rhythmic idea, our dotted 8th 16th pattern, and moving it around from count 4 to count 3 to count 2 to count 1. So now we begin with letter E, and we start integrating this dotted 8th 16th note idea with rhythms that we are familiar with because we've studied them in previous months, right? In previous harmonic workouts. So let's check out letter E. We have, our straight 8ths in there, followed by a dotted 8th 16th. Look at measure 2. We have our quarter note triplet. We're very familiar with that. All right, and then measure 3, we're back to straight 8ths again, then followed by our dotted 8th 16th note pattern. So this should be fun. In fact, I think you're going to find as we move through E through L, now with the inclusion of the syncopation with this dotted 8th 16th, these lines start to actually sound more and more like legitimate comping rhythms and patterns that you would hear a jazz pianist play. So let's bring the ensemble in and let's check out letter E. Here we go. Love it, right? Like I said, now that we're integrating this dotted 8th 16th pattern with other rhythmic motifs and ideas that we have studied throughout the years, the line's starting to sound more and more like a legitimate comping rhythm that you would hear a jazz pianist play. So let's continue to march on. So let's take a look at letter F. Right out of the chute, we begin with our dotted eighth, 16th motif, followed by a quarter and traditional eighth notes, a pair of eighth notes. Look at measure 2, eighth note triplet, right? But measure 3, we have our dotted eighth, 16th motif again, followed by a quarter, 2 eighths. Then we have some eighth notes, single eighth notes falling on the back side of the beat. On the end of 4, on the end of 1 in measure 4, on the end of 2, followed by a pair of eighth notes on count 3 in measure 4. So this should be fun. This is going to sound great. So let's bring the ensemble in and let's check out letter F. Here we go. Very nice. Once again, right, you can practice these rhythmic ideas using a single note, right? You do not need to be using voicings initially. Then once you're comfortable with the rhythmic line, you feel like you have a command of it conceptually and then, of course, physically, then you can begin to incorporate the voicings of your choice, whether they're the blocks or the traditional shells, contemporary shells, or the two-handed shapes that I'm using today. Okay? All right, so now let's take a look at letter G. We have our dotted quarter eighth combination in measure 1, followed by eighth quarter eighth combination. Both of these rhythmic ideas we've studied. Measure 2, we have a pair of eighth notes on count 1, couple quarter rests to deal with. Then we have our dotted eighth 16th note pattern, followed immediately with a pair of eighth notes. And again, a couple more quarter rests, ending with a dotted eighth 16th note motif on count 4 in measure 3, and landing on a dotted half note in measure 4. Very nice. This will be fun as well. So let's bring the ensemble in and let's check out letter G. Here we go. Down, 5 to go, right? We're over halfway through our rhythmic ideas for today, rhythmic lines. So now let's check out letter H. We start immediately with an eighth note triplet on count 1, couple quarter rests, followed up with our dotted eighth 16th note pattern. And then measure 2, we kind of repeat the same idea, though we have a pair of eighth notes on count 1, followed by a couple quarter rests again, eighth note triplet on count 4. Measure 3, we got that dotted quarter eighth combination to deal with. And then measure 4, this is interesting, right? Quarter note on count 1, followed by the dotted 8th 16th on 2, followed by a pair of 8th notes. So you can really start to hear and experience the comparing and the contrasting of those two motifs, the dotted 8th 16th next to a pair of traditional 8th notes. Okay, so let's bring the ensemble in. Let's check out letter H. Here we go. Absolutely love it. But just as a side note, measure 1 and measure 2 of letter H have absolutely nothing in common. Right? I just mentioned earlier, hey, we're repeating the same kind of idea. Not even close. The only thing similar is that we have, in each of those measures, we have 8th note triplets. So I bring that up because I don't want to cause any confusion. All right? Okay, so now let's take a look at letter I. I love this, right? We begin with the 8th dotted quarter rhythmic motif that we have dealt with in previous months, followed immediately with our dotted 8th 16th note pattern. And then we do repeat that idea in measure 2 with the dotted 8th, the 8th going to the dotted quarter, following with the dotted 8th 16th idea. Okay, measure 3, measure 4 gets a little bit more comfy for us. We're familiar with this. We have a pair of 8th notes on count 1, quarter note on count 4, followed up with that fantastic idea of the dotted quarter 8th pattern that we're very familiar with. So let's bring the ensemble in and let's check out letter I. Here we go. Love it. Absolutely love it. And again, right, these rhythmic lines are starting to sound pretty legit as soon as we added in this dotted 8th 16th idea, along with all our other traditional rhythmic motifs that we've studied throughout the year. So now letter J, right? We start with a dotted half note, not a half note, dotted half note, followed up with the dotted 8th 16th idea on count 4, followed with our dotted quarter 8th idea in count 2. Check out 3. We bring in an old familiar rhythm, right? Our 8th beamed with 2 16th notes. And check out measure 4. 2 16th notes beamed with an 8th, right? And we have a tied note in there on count 2. And then check out count 3. Dotted 8th 16th. Woo, okay. Might look simple visually, but I can guarantee you this is going to be a little challenge physically. So let's bring the ensemble in and let's check it out. Here we go. Not easy indeed, right? And guess what? K and L, we're going to finish with a bang here because K and L doesn't get any easier at all, right? So letter K, we begin with our pair of 16th notes beamed to a quarter, but check it out. Count 1, the end of count 1 is tied to count 2, is tied to count 3. We come out of that with our dotted 8th 16th pattern, immediately into a traditional pair of 8th notes. And then we have these single 8th notes appearing again on the back side of count 2, back side of count 3, back side of count 4. Then we have our dotted half note to deal with. And again, why this is challenging is because you're sitting there for 3 beats playing nothing. And what have I said before in the past? The hardest thing for any jazz pianist to play is nothing. Then we have our dotted 8th 16th pattern on count 4, followed by our traditional dotted quarter 8th pattern in measure 4. Wow, this is going to be fun. So let's bring the ensemble right back in and let's check out letter K. Here we go. How fun is that? Wow. Well, if you thought that was fun, check out letter L. Ooh, right away. 4 16th notes, right, beamed together on count 1. We have the same thing in measure 2, right? Count 1, 4 16th notes. Both count 1 measure 1 and measure 2. After those 16th notes, we have to follow it up with a dotted 8th 16th pattern, rhythmic idea on count 4 in both measures 1 and 2. Then in measure 3, pair of 8th notes, couple quarter rest, and then we end with our dotted 8th 16th note pattern leading into a pair of 8th notes in count 4, and then a backside 8th note on the end of 2. And again, it's nice having that dotted 8th 16th followed immediately with a pair of 8ths, so you can do that compare and contrast to help you digest the rhythmic feel, the rhythmic sound, the idea of the dotted 8th 16th rhythmic motif. So let's bring the ensemble in and let's check out the final rhythmic line for today, letter L. Here we go. Check it out. We've done it again. As always, we have unpacked an amazing amount of information in one very short and very fast hour. And do not underestimate the importance of being able to play rhythmic comping patterns in time using correct jazz voicings. As with all of the rhythmic patterns we have studied throughout the entire year, we have focused on developing your ability to track and feel time. And so often, when students are struggling playing jazz, it's because of their inability to successfully play, successfully track time. In other words, knowing internally and instinctually where count 1 is, count 2, count 3, count 4, and not just guess. Again, if you guess, I promise you're going to guess wrong, right? I've said it before. You have a greater chance at guessing rhythms. You have a greater chance at winning the lottery than you do at guessing rhythms, right? So take the time. Do not underestimate it. As I said, take the time to practice these rhythmic ideas and take it seriously, the importance of being able to play these rhythmic ideas in time. Now, next week we jump into a key of A major melodic workout. And of course, I will be introducing some new rhythmic ideas and twists in that workout as well. Once again, I want to encourage all of you Jazz Piano Skills members to use your podcast packets, the illustrations, the lead sheets, and the play-alongs to guide you as you study and practice. Again, these are educational tools, amazing educational tools that will help you gain a mastery of the jazz piano skills conceptually, physically, and of course, musically. And as always, be patient. Developing mature, professional jazz piano skills takes time. So begin structuring your practicing after the playing demonstrations that I've modeled for you today in this podcast lesson, in this podcast episode. And I guarantee it, if you do that, you will begin to see, feel, and hear your musical progress. Well, I hope you have found this Jazz Piano Skills podcast lesson exploring the key of A major harmonically to be insightful and beneficial. And don't forget, if you are a Jazz Piano Skills Ensemble member, I will see you online Thursday evening at the Jazz Piano Skills Masterclass. That's 8 p.m. Central Time to discuss this podcast episode lesson exploring a key of A major harmonic workout in greater detail and to answer any questions that you may have about the study of jazz in general. Again, use your educational podcast packets, your illustrations, your lead sheets, your play-alongs for this podcast lesson, and dive into the Jazz Piano Skills courses, the online curriculum, to maximize your musical growth. Also, make sure you are an active participant in the Jazz Piano Skills community. Get out there, get involved, contribute to the various forums, and make some new jazz piano friends. Always a great thing to do. Now, you can reach me by phone, 972-380-8050. My extension here at the Dallas School of Music is 2 If you prefer email, my email address is Dr. Lawrence. That's drlawrence at jazzpianoskills.com. Or you can use that nifty little widget that you find laced throughout the Jazz Piano Skills website called SpeakPipe to send me a voice message as well. Well, there is my cue. That's it for now. And until next week, enjoy the key of E. Oh, key of E is over. The key of A major harmonic workout. And most of all, have fun as you discover, learn, and play jazz piano.